My pleasure to moderate this session here, and but we have very limited time, so it's from 2:30 to 3:50. So I think uh, this session is on skepticism and conspiracy, the danger of misinformation and disinformation. We are facing this problem, including hate speech, spreading hatred, and etc. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm proud to introduce the panelists. We have Anurag Acharya, Director, Policy Entrepreneurs, Inc., Nepal. We have Kui Hong Thai, and she has another name, is Sherry, whichever is convenient. We are allowed to call her. We have Leo Uyghur, editor, Zenith Magazine, Germany. And we have Nurul Kabir, editor, New Age, Bangladesh. And Parveen F. Chaudhary, President, Commonwealth Journalists Association, Bangladesh. So we will only have each speaker panelist can speak up to 10 minutes. And then we'll open up the floor if there is or are any question come from the audience. Our speakers, panelists will try to address those. And for the panelists, you're free to speak from where you are sitting, or you can go to the standing microphone. And I will describe the way we will run this question and answer session. So each of the speakers, as I said, will have maximum 10 minutes, but we'll try to make it as precise as possible. And I would like to invite Anurag Acharya, Director, Policy Entrepreneurs, Inc., from Nepal. Anurag.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking Center for Governance Studies and congratulating them for organizing this wonderful event with important issues at hand for discussion, and none so important as this one that we are discussing about the dangers of misinformation and disinformation. To begin with, misinformation has always been around. We know, I mean, like always a concern for society, especially in the developing world, where sources of information were limited in the past, often controlled by the state. It was easy for somebody to be misinformed or be manipulated, which sometimes spiraled out of control and often influenced public opinion. Earlier, it was more due to how information was shared that misinformation spread. I can give you an example of how public were misinformed about the risk of HIV, back in my country, resulting in stigma against those infected and survivors. I'm like, we've had that experience in other parts of the world as well. Of course, there were also some deliberate attempts in other cases to disinform people. Example, you might have heard in South Asia, we have heard about God statues drinking milk, which made large headlines in the media, and UFO sightings, I think many in Western part of the world, or even predicting apocalypse. I mean, like that happens in any part of the world. Very rarely did those kind of disinformation become a challenge or a tragedy for our societies at the scale that we are seeing now. the states or the government back then could at least control or intercept such disinformation and take countermeasures. But the kind of disinformation that we are seeing in the new age of internet and social media with, photoshops, deep fakes, it's a completely different beast. It has come to become an effective or even an acceptable tool or a technology-powered weapon in the hands of individuals, interest groups, or even those in the government to serve their vested or ulterior motives. And the risk or the consequences transcend are not just confined within the country, they transcend the boundaries. And like, for instance, we talk about the campaign for climate change denials, targeted disinformation against the vaccine, or even the conspiracy theory around 5G technology that we have seen in different countries. But the impacts and consequences are greater for developing countries where public awareness or literacy levels can be lower, especially regarding the technological sophistication about how the disinformation spreads. I mean, I can give you an example from my own country where, it would be easier for me to talk to, people from my generation about disinformation, but it is extremely difficult to convince people of, elderly citizens to convince them about the, the genuine news or the fake news. It's very difficult for them to comprehend how a photo or even a video can be doctored. And there are a lot of people that are not, highly literate. So it's very easy to manipulate that section of the population. So things get more challenging when political interests also come into play over here. Like a few years back in Nepal, there was a kind of, communal violence which was incited by spreading of, fake videos or fake photos of, that hurt religious sentiment of, one community. Like, now we are seeing those kind of incidents repeated. Only in the last few months, we have had 3 or 4 incidents where the attempt to incite hate against the minorities by spreading videos or photos of content, which were not necessarily, happening in Nepal. They were happening somewhere, in the neighborhood, somewhere definitely not in our country, that were, doctored and shown as if it is happening in Nepal. And then it kind of riled up the, population. Next door, India is also, witnessing similar kind of, communal tensions, which is fueled by these kind of disinformation. I'm sure, in other parts of the, world and the region also this kind of thing is happening. We saw how, a US aid program, a simple, development aid program in Nepal and in Sri Lanka led to a massive protest because, there were a targeted disinformation campaign, supposedly, making people believe that, accepting a simple development aid would result in de facto US establishing an, air base or a military base in the country. I can't speak for Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan friends will talk about it, but in my country, it resulted in an unfortunate death of a person, and there was large scale, widespread protest across the country, and many, property were damaged. So the biggest risk and initial consequences we are witnessing as a result of this kind of disinformation is erosion of public faith or trust in the institutions. Or democratic processes itself, including elections. There is a growing cynicism, especially among the young population of voters who don't know what to believe in or what to believe in, whom to believe. And this has given a rise or increase in the, populism, groups and individuals who feed on such cynicism and disillusionment. And there is no silver bullet solution to this kind of challenges we face. I mean, Some call for tighter restrictions on social media or media as a whole, but then it's a double-edged sword where we see governments misusing control of quote-unquote disinformation to silence dissent. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. Instead, I think what we have to propose is a more uphill task of restoring public trust back on the institutions, media, governance, government, think tanks, scholars, restore trust in the institutions, but also seek information transparency and accountability, demand accountability from the institutions. And it is easier said than done. I stand over here fully realizing this fact, but it is up to our institutions, and I am a former journalist, so I especially think media has a greater role to play, but as somebody who's leading a think tank or a scholarly work, I also think that scholars and think tank also have an immense role to reclaim the agendas, from hearsays, social media disinformation mongers, back and restore the credibility of the institution itself and the processes, the values, the democratic values that we also cherish. I will end on that note because this is an ongoing conversation. I think I'm sure my esteemed panelists will contribute to this, and I'll be able to take questions later on. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Anurag. This is a good initiation of this discussion today, and he mentioned about this disinformation, misinformation is not new, but because of the social media, because of the internet, it's spreading more, and it has also relationship with disturbing the social harmony and spreading hatred. So the next speaker is Sherry. I would like to call her Sherry. That's easier for me. She is the professor for Center for American Studies in Fudan University in China. Sherry, please.
Thank you. I think I would like to speak from chair. That is much easier. I really think it's a very important topic. I start with this one. I got this from outside of the room. And the topic is the unending nightmare, impacts of Bangladesh Digital Security Act 2018. I think it is very nicely written, and the unending nightmare also suits with our topic, our theme. Dangers of misinformation and disinformation. So my first point is that we are living in an era rampant with misinformation and disinformation, and this trend shows little sign of ebbing. So the key word here is proliferation. So we see in the last several years, we see a lot of proliferation of misinformation and disinformation, or malinformation or false information. And there is actually the World Economic Forum in 2018, the Global Risks Report. It classified the spread of online misinformation among the world's top global risks. So I think it is a very significant trend that we have to notice about. And then before reaching more ideas, I think I would like to mention several definitions related. First is disinformation. Disinformation is a kind of a false information, of course. And that is deliberately created and spread with the intention of misleading or causing harms. So it involves a kind of a purpose for deception, and this is disinformation. And misinformation is false information that is spread unintentionally or without malice. So we often maybe see other related words such as pseudoscience. It refers to kind of beliefs or practices that present themselves as science, but lack the rigorous testing and evidence associated scientific methodology. So pseudoscience usually cloaks itself in a scientific legitimacy, so it can be more effective. And then during Trump administration, we got a new word, fake news. Everyone here in this room, I believe that it is known to all. So it can entirely made up of or involve drastic distortions of real events, is often, and it is often propagated to serve a specific agenda or to gain financial profits. So here, one keyword is proliferation. Another one is viral sharing, because we are living in a digital era and social media platforms, and it is kind of spread with a viral speed, viral proliferation speed. For fake news, it has a deliberate and sensational nature. And of course, for this theme, we also have the conspiracy. I think it is go beyond misinformation and disinformation, because it has a kind of nature of clandestine. So this is my first point and definition. And second, I would like to say that all these misinformation and disinformation, it has its history. And we, as I mentioned, during Trump administration, or especially from the end of 2016 to the beginning of 2020, fake news demonstrated very high volumes of mentions in that period. And then after a pandemic, we see a lot of other misinformation and disinformation gained more momentum rapidly in the later half of 2020. And then another point I would like to mention is that misinformation and disinformation are now more, in some cases, have become political tools. And this is more noticeable and have to be cautious. And then why they are produced, I would like to say, first is about the technology. We see as I said, social media, and especially social media, it has instantaneous reach, allows force information to travel faster and further than ever before. And it's, there's another effect called echo chamber effect. So these social media, they have kind of algorithms, and these algorithms create a so-called echo chamber effect. So this effect consistently exposing users to content that aligns with their interests, their own interests and beliefs. So due to such echo chamber effect and also illusory truth effect, repeated exposure results in the misinformation appearing more credible. And then my third point is about how it is connected to conspiracy, or how it is received or accepted by different people. And we see that it is worldwide misinformation or false information. But for generally speaking, we see that education level, economic status, and political ideology greatly influence an individual's susceptibility to these false information. And also, of course, thinking style and personality traits also contribute to the reception or susceptibility of these false information. For example, people leaning heavily on intuitive thinking or gut feelings when determining truths are more predisposed to conspiracy beliefs. And we also see a different trend among different regions. It is very interesting. It varies, the risk perception of these, the risks of misinformation and disinformation varies across regions. The concern is highest in Latin America and Caribbean. That is about 74%, and the lowest in South Asia. So congratulations, South Asia has the lowest perception of risks of misinformation and disinformation. I have not done research on that about the reasons behind that, but it is a good sign, I think, it's of the confidence of maybe media and maybe, you know, government, etc. And yeah, for the United States, that is 67%, a little bit above average. And for China, it is a little bit below the global average, that is 50%. And then I'm not going to mention there are so many results of the misinformation and disinformation for economy, for politics, for security, for even culture. For example, for economy, we know we actually have a lot of statistic numbers about that. For example, online fake news costs the global economy 77 billion annually. So that is astonishing. And also there's a global disinformation index. It found that the annual revenue of at least 235 million is generated from advertisements running on extremist and disinformation websites. So this is astonishing. And these really reduce consumer confidence and spending, and also harming businesses' competitiveness and innovation. Of course, threatening economic growth and development. And there are, you know, political effects. And political effects I would like to mention. There is also a keyword here in the last paragraph. It mentioned the weaponized. I think it is a very good word, weaponized. You know, some are intentional, but some are weaponized intentionally to incite hatred against marginalized groups and dissidents, etc. So this really caused a lot of problems, such as polarization and even conflict. And then for national security, it compromised security and nations' resilience, and also undermining regional stability and cooperation, etc. And there are a lot of other. And maybe my time is almost up. So I leave the what are the strategies to cope with these misinformation and disinformation? Leave that to discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Sherry has mentioned the definition of the misinformation and disinformation. And also, like, it's not only the problem with Nepal or Bangladesh, it's a global phenomenon. And when it's used for political reasons, then it goes often against the minority and different beliefs, religious or political beliefs, and etc. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Now I would like to invite Leo Uyghur, the editor of Zenith magazine from Germany. Leo.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Honorable Chair Farouk, and thank you to the entire CGS team, and especially to Zilurbai for facilitating this conference and giving space to these important conversations to have. I think the Bay of Bengal Conversation is a wonderful space to make diverse voices from Bangladesh and the region heard abroad. And conferences such as this one contribute to Bangladesh's growing stake as part of global conversations. On a personal level, I'm very grateful to be here. Bangladesh is such a young and energetic place, coming from a country where roughly 1 in 4% of the population is above 60, seeing the dynamism of Bangladesh and of Dhaka as a city where, you know, like things change every day is something that is very refreshing and that I really enjoy. So thank you for the invite and for being here. Well, I mean, the topic that I want to discuss with you today is the interplay of fake news, generative AI, and the effects that this has on freedom of speech, societal polarization, and the erosion of democratic practices all over the world. Let me start by sharing a European perspective on misinformation, because it's a common misconception that fake news don't affect Europe. They do. Fake news, better referred to as misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, is assuming increasingly disturbing dimensions in Europe. Especially smaller EU members are perceived by external actors as soft targets to advance their strategic interests. Especially in the context of Russia's war against Ukraine, we observe an increase in disinformation efforts. In this context, fake news is used tactically and strategically by external actors. Russian propaganda, in particular, is stepping up its activities here, but other actors are trying to expand their influence through targeted media campaigns as well. Let me share one number with you. 71% of Europeans encounter fake news online several times a month. 30% come across news or information they believe misrepresents reality every day or almost every day. And fake news destroys mutual trust and thus shakes the basis for cooperation, not only with state actors, but also within civil society. In 2018, the EU set out an action plan to combat the spread of disinformation. I think it was the first plan of its kind in the world. The code, as it was called, aims to reduce the spread of disinformation by a range of tools, such as improving transparency of how advertising is used, enhancing the transparency of political and issue-based advertising, by limiting and fighting bots and other manipulative techniques used to artificially spread misinformation, and by empowering consumers by improving access to diverse and trustworthy content. And there are other dangers to the media in the digital age. In a recent report, the UN Special Representative, Irene Khan, pointed to the erosion of independence, pluralism, and economic viability of media in the digital age. Reporters getting killed while chasing a story. Online attacks against women journalists, including death and rape threats. Targeted electronic surveillance to intimidate and silence investigative journalism. In a number of countries, including in Central and Eastern Europe, there's a creeping trend towards state control over public media, and in favoring privately owned media that serves the political or economic interests of those in power. And the decline of media freedom and the rise in threats to the safety of journalists is a worldwide trend, most sharply evident in backsliding democracies and totalitarian states taking over. The consequences for human rights, democracy, public participation, and development are worrying. According to the Freedom House, global freedom declined for the 17th year in a row globally. 17th year in a row. Infringement on freedom of expression has long been a key driver of global democratic decline. Over the last 17 years, the number of countries and territories that receive a score of 0 in the Freedom House ranking out of 4 in the report indicator has ballooned from 14 to 33 countries in the last category of the ranking. And journalists face persistent attacks from autocrats and their supporters while receiving inadequate protection from intimidation and violence, even in democracies. The past year brought more of the same, with media freedom coming under pressure in at least 157 countries and territories, the vast majority of the world. So this is also affecting Europe. I mean, there are many cases of killed journalists in Europe as well. a US study found that politicians were not being able to distinguish between letters written by concerned citizens or AI-generated bots. This is a huge problem because with the rise of AI, all the trends that we've seen before are just exaggerating even more. So the question is, of course, how can the freedom of speech survive in an era of AI-generated bots that we cannot distinguish anymore from reality? And this is, of course, a big question to target and to deal with. And in short, I want to end here with something that the New Yorker magazine has written recently. ChatGPT will strain a political system in peril. And this is a global phenomenon, and this is thus a global conversation to be had. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. And it's my great joy that I shared the same panel during the last Bay of Bengal conference, and he's back again. And also, like the organization that I was working till last month called Article 19, and it works worldwide for freedom of expression. And with the Deutsche Welle Academy from Germany, this organization is working on media literacy for general public, especially students and young people. So there are problems everywhere, and the relationship between freedom of expression and misinformation. But I'm glad that Deutsche Welle Academy is working on this with the organization that I was involved with. And so thank you very much for raising the relationship between misinformation, disinformation, and freedom of expression. And next speaker, I would like to invite Mr. Nurul Kabir, editor New Age of Bangladesh from Dhaka. But who are Bangladeshi here, they know him very well. And it's a pleasure to have you, Nurul Kabir bhai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable panelists and ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. Well, I'll be very brief. We'll start from repeating what our Chinese friend has already said, definition of the misinformation and disinformation, facts and other things. And giving some examples, we'll try to discuss why actually we discuss these kind of things today. The relevance here within our national boundary and beyond. In fact, we live in a world that we can call infodemic world. You have so much of information, disinformation and misinformation, that is something like spreading like epidemic. It's very difficult to separate at times an information from misinformation from disinformation. And that's why we need to clearly understand information is information, facts that we need to have a sound life, personal, social, national, and international. Misinformation is of course false. And as our friend said, misinformation may not always be ill-intended. All of us make mistakes. Innocently, we can provide you with some information which is not inadequate. Inadequacy of information may eventually leads us to draw some misleading conclusions about facts of life, and that's dangerous. If not dangerous, I must say is harmful, if not even ill-intended. disinformation is the most dangerous thing, which is created, generated, spread deliberately like a campaign. Say, on a grand scale, global scale, one of the worst disinformation campaign was, say, Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. This was a clear case of serious disinformation because who created and generated knew pretty well that's not fact. Why did they do that? Because they had their political, geopolitical, and economic interests. In the end, a huge population was killed. That's the worst case of disinformation on a grand scale in our times. Disinformation at the national level, for example, when our incumbents in Bangladesh claims that Bangladesh is a democracy, or a democracy which is witnessing huge economic development. It's a clear case of disinformation because Bangladesh is not a democracy. The government installed is not a democratic one because there was no proper elections in 2014 and 2018 because voters couldn't choose their representatives. If voters cannot choose their representatives, if the election, a national election is not inclusive, participatory, and competitive, and then a government is installed which doesn't have any accountability to the people, cannot be a democracy. So it's a disinformation, dangerous. That the economic development the incumbents are talking about is also dangerous disinformation. Say, we have our huge, large structures, you can see, daytime. You visit those places at midnight, you will see homeless people sleeping there. None of us sure that they're sleeping with a full meal or not. How, due to inequality of so-called development and widespread of poverty, different research findings shows that our nutrition intake of a huge number of people has been reduced. School dropouts are increasing. Even the female child marriages are increasing due to poverty. But we are told every day that Bangladesh is a good democracy, that our incumbents don't need to be educated in democracy, and they have done a lot of development. And if we criticize the lack of it, they will stop and sit idle, wait for the next election to come. This is dangerous disinformation. Why are they doing it? Disinformation has always an ill intention to misinform, mislead people, to legitimize certain crimes, be it political, economic, or cultural. So we discuss this here because we need to fight this disinformation effectively. And this is not the case of Bangladesh. Say, we are close to, in many South Asian countries and beyond that, that our friends have already told you, there are a lot of disinformation every day produced to mislead people. And on the other hand, if we want democracy, development, peace and harmony, we have to fight disinformation and disseminate information, public information. We have to make sure that public information flows freely, and that's a political struggle. End of the day, democracy is a political struggle, development is a political struggle, and for that to happen, we need proper public information, dissemination of that, and we can force some solidarity at national level, regional level, and international level to fight disinformation against those who wants to deliberately disfranchise people about information and legitimize their undemocratic roles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nurul Kabi Bhai. And he rightly expressed the need of democracy to stop the misinformation and disinformation, and the responsibility of the government as well in a if it is a democratic country, and then with the citizens and election, it has very close relationship. I would like to invite now Parveen F. Chaudhary, who is the president of Commonwealth Journalist Association in Bangladesh. Parveen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and greetings to my fellow participating speakers and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin with a quote from the book The Campaign 2022, which was edited by Spencer J.S. Kinnan. Social media and alternative news sources which allow any user to produce unverified online content have gained popularity. Social network can break down physical barriers by connecting geographically dispersed people, easing political and economic constraints. Their rise has changed the paradigm of information production and consumption, as they are now the preferred means of staying up to date with news and current affairs. While before the reader was a passive agent waiting for a synchronous production of news, there is now an increasing demand for timely, near real-time journalistic coverage. As news organizations cannot meet this demand, the public itself has taken their role. The intrinsic dynamism of social network is able to fill this gap, giving therefore voice to the production of amateur content. Social media platforms offer an environment suited for collective sense-making and for the emergence of stories created with the intention of filling information gap left by mainstream media. It can be argued that governments and large corporations use users' data, targeting advertising and selective speech to manipulate users of popular social media platforms. They do this in order to achieve their agenda goals at the expense of the users. These goals may range from selling a certain good to service to swaying a certain percentage of voters to cast their ballots one way or another. Regardless of the outcome, people are being taken advantage of it, with most not even knowing it. Okay. The online world needs to open its eyes to understand the industry that has evolved from social media and how it has been turned into a means of manipulation. When, due to regulatory restrictions, their compliance prevent mainstream media to provide facts and hard news, people are provided with an alternative platform through social networking and internet. People at times lose confidence in established networking platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, etc., as unverified information are routinely used to influence public opinion by the authorities and other organizations who could gain commercial advantages. Governments around the world have dramatically increased their efforts to manipulate information on social media over the past years. The Chinese and Russian regime pioneered the use of surreptitious methods to distort online discussion and suppress dissent more than a decade ago. But the practice has since gone global. Such state-led intervention presents a major threat to the notion of the internet as a deliberating technology. When the term fake news comes, people usually think of social media posts with rather fantastic, implausible stories. While posts shared on social media is its most visible aspects, there is no much more to fake news than exaggerate article titles on social media feeds. Fake news media may seem new, but the platform used is the only new thing about it. Propaganda has been around for centuries, and the internet is only the latest means of communication to be abused by spread lies and information. The effects of these rapidly spreading techniques on democracy and civic activism are potentially devastating. The fabrication of grassroots support for government policies on social media creates a closed loop in which the regime essentially endorses itself, leaving independent groups and ordinary citizens on the outside. And by bolstering the false perception that most citizens stand with them, authorities are unable to justify crackdowns on political opposition and advance anti-democratic changes to laws and institutions without a proper debate. Worryingly, state-sponsored manipulation on social media is often coupled with broader restriction on the news media that prevent access to objective reporting and render societies more susceptible to disinformation, which is now unabated, expanding in South Asia. In the absence of a comprehensive campaign to deal with this threat, manipulation and disinformation techniques could enable modern authoritarian regime to expand their power and influence while permanently eroding user confidence, online media, and the internet as a whole. Recently, there was a conclusion drawn in a study. Online content manipulation contributed to a 7th consecutive year of overall decision in internet freedom, along with a rise in disruption to mobile internet services and increases in physical and technical attacks on human rights defenders and independent media. This content was edited by Sanja Kelly, Mang Torang, Andrian Shabazz, Madeline Earp, and Jessica White from Freedom House, where conclusions were drawn. Conclusion was drawn, online manipulation and disinformation tactics played an important role in elections in at least 18 countries over the past year, including the United States. Disinformation tactics contributed to a 7th consecutive year to overall decline in internet freedom, as did a rise in disruptions to mobile internet service and increases in physical and technical attacks on human rights defenders and independent media. A record number of governments have restricted mobile internet service for political or security reasons, often in areas populated by ethnic or religious minorities. For the 3rd consecutive year, China was the world's worst abuser of internet freedom, followed by Syria and Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parveen Chaudhary. And she has rightly brought the issue up, the relationship between freedom of expression, misinformation, and election, and also the role that social media plays on this spreading the misinformation, disinformation. I'm happy that she has also mentioned about the declining of election neutrality in different countries and how the standard of election are going down below. I'm happy that the speakers are all on time, and so we have saved some time. So I will open up the floor for questions. I would request anyone who has a question should come to the 2 microphones that we have on 2 sides and speak to the microphone. And if you are asking that question to a specific speaker or panelist, please mention that, and please keep the question short and and also like to the point. So thank you very much. Now we are opening the floor. Okay. Actually, there are three microphones. I didn't notice that. No. No. Can someone help with the microphone, please?
Good afternoon. This is Nabila, and I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's degree at East West University. So my question is, at this time as informations are being manipulated or misinformations are spreading, so we need a trusted source, right, where we can rely for informations. For most of the time, it is the newspapers or TV channels that broadcast news. But as our first speaker has said, that many times these news are like, they're filtered by the government or societies or by the powerful people who are in charge of everything. So where do we trust for reliable informations? How can we find this transparency in other medias and us, so we cannot be manipulated by other misinformations?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And it's good to see, young people asking this question, because back in my hometown or in my country, I think it's mostly the youth that are losing their faith or trust in the institutions. So I'll go back to saying what I said, and this will refer to media as well, that we need to restore faith in the institution. And to do that, the institution itself has to fight back. I've been a journalist before, and I've always argued that, editors and journalists need to protect the, editorial integrity, their newsroom, freedom of their newsroom. I think before we defend the democracy of the country and society, the journalists should start defending the democracy of the newsroom, the democratic deficit that exists within the newsroom, the intolerance against the dissenting views of the journalists, that also needs to be changed, that needs to be challenged. And when the public sees that the newsroom itself is democratic, then that, trust will come back, that will be restored. Because let's face it, at least in South Asia, not just in Nepal, across South Asia, our newsroom are also lacking in, public trust. And part of the reason, at least in my country, is because even the media has been divided, the civil society has been divided across along partisan line. So that is part of the problem. So institutions also need to reflect within themselves, to correct themselves, to earn that public trust. And of course, the public also, the consumer information also have to be careful about the kind of news they are consuming. You have to be able to differentiate between the fake news and the genuine source of news. You have a nationally trusted, accredited news websites and news platforms. Whereas there are, everyday mushrooming YouTube videos, the Facebook that are, masquerading as, genuine news sources. We have to be aware about that, and also make, people that are not aware about that, because in our, part of the world, I said that, there are people that are not highly literate and sometimes technologically not savvy. So they don't understand the, how the deep fake works. They don't understand how the news can be manipulated or, tampered with. So there needs to be awareness both on the proponent of the news as well as the consumer of the news. Thank you. I hope that answers.
Anyone else from the panel
have a
would like to comment on that? Yeah, Sherry.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and I think you relate power and trustworthy. They are not always linked together, but usually because more powerful resources of those news, perhaps they have more verification. I think that is the most important. That makes the news or information from power resources more reliable. And I think every country has certain regulations to verify those different sources of news media. For example, in China, we have, like for social media, we have a public account management system. And for official newspapers, that is more, there are more regulations that are related to verify the sources, and also for the punishment if there is any mistakes, etc. For example, the exit system, etc. So the trust or confidence is not related to power. It is related to verification systems, I think. Thank you for the great question.
Thank you, Sherry. Anyone else? Nurukobi Bhai?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add that, of course, because, the digital age and generative AI have fundamentally changed societies. It has also changed fundamentally the way, the environment that informations are being processed, that reality is being defined in a way. And I think, defending media freedom and defending, freedom of information is very, very crucial among, a time of fundamental technological change. But it's also a question, a task of a generation. It's a task of the young generation, of the millennials and the Gen Z to actually fight for that because it's their future and their life that is being at stake.
Thank you, Leo. Nurul Kabir Bhai? No.
Me?
No, it's working.
You can?
Yeah.
Well, and this is the most challenging question that she has put forward too. It's for even the professional journalists, even those who try to find out right information by digging or delving deep into a phenomenon, they have the different kinds of constraints. But still, for the professional journalists, they have to keep on trying to do that very honestly, because every profession has some question of sanity and professional promises to fulfill. On the other hand, the receiving end, it's very important to be aware of the situation, and to develop a questioning mind of the citizens are important too. To learning to put forward with critical questions. Don't trust anyone, any authorities for that matter, because who are capable of providing disinformation or conducting misinformation, disinformation campaign? Those who are powerful, no matter whether it's I'm not talking about just state power. There are forces in and outside the party, at the political level, at social level, who controls the means of providing information. Question everybody. Keep a vigilant mind, because as I say, we are living in a pandemic type of a situation, that a lot of misinformation and disinformation. So those who professionally know that they have the responsibility, and the citizens' right to know the public information particularly. The citizens need to assert their right and remain vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nurul Kabir Bhai. If Parveen Chaudhary, do you have any comment, please?
What I understand from her... Hello? Okay. I think what I have understand from her question, the authentication of news. She want to know, isn't it?
You have to come closer to the microphone. Please.
Authentication of news, how she can trust this news, this is a true or false. Yeah, as a journalist, at the moment it is very, very difficult, because last year while I was covering the flood stories in Sylhet, northeastern part of Bangladesh, we covered at least 5 to 6 stories of flood, but when authentication from government side, like it has to be a police or it has to be a government official or someone to say, yes, there are casualties of 15 people or 4 people. But nowadays, actually it's my experience, I'm just sharing with you, if that officer and if that authenticated officer like like government, like if they sided with the government, they won't let us know the real facts of the casualties. So it is my part of duty to find out what is the real casualties, what is the real information. So these are the challenges we are facing at present. So it has to be your own duty to find out how much casualties, what is the real condition, and how you have to present this story. So everything lies with a journalist. He or she has to be responsible for the, not the fake news, the real news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next question, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor. So
we can't hear you.
Can anyone help with the mic? Oh, thanks. It's on again. So my question was for the panel, but also I would like to mention Leo, because he said that it's the responsibility of Leo or another person, somebody from the panel mentioned that this is the responsibility of a younger generation to actually deal with this type of trouble. So in a country where democracy isn't practiced properly and laws and legislations are imposed on free speech as a way to weaponize fear of spreading misinformation, how general young people like us should treat here? Because we have seen people dying over a Facebook status. We have seen people sharing just a simple information and losing their life. So how we are going to deal with this fact? What are we supposed to do even if we know the true fact about something?
I understand. Thank you. I think I understand the frustration, because I think a lot of the questions that you pose are something that, even, people back in my country, youths in my country would pose. And there is no silver bullet answer like, I mentioned in my earlier presentation. I think at least what, our younger generation is blessed with is, tools, the technological know-how that, the older generation may not necessarily have that kind of sophistication. So probably, we use our, knowledge of technology to at least, cross-verify information before we share, to at least, triangulate information. Many of, students, and most of the students know the basics of research. The information triangulation is a part of the, being a researcher. So even, by simple triangulation of information, you can verify most of the fake news, because most of the time fake news and disinformation is not very sophisticated. They can be very local and they can be very, basic kind of disinformation. These days, disinformation does not happen just at the large, national level. It can also happen at the very local level. So if the information triangulation happens at the local level, then that kind of disinformation can be tackled and stopped at the local level. But of course, there are other sophisticated tools as well that, our, other fellow panelists from China, she was talking about the use of, technology. There are now technology which allow you to compare between genuine photos and fake photos, between genuine videos and fake videos. So, we are facing a kind of, cyber army trying to spread disinformation. So probably, each of us consuming the news, consuming the information also have to be an army to fight back this kind of disinformation. Because, let's face it, as a younger generation, I think the onus is more on young people's skill with that, skill set to actually fight back disinformation. Hope that answers.
Thank you.
It's a massive burden, and I don't want to overwhelm, but that's a fact, I think.
Leo.
Yeah, because you mentioned me as well, I want to work on, or add my perspective as well. I think, unfortunately, this is, of course, a very crucial question, and I don't have one simple answer to that, because what you said, in my opinion, is entirely accurate, and it's also a global phenomenon. So kind of like going maybe one step back to, like in Germany, like talking from my experience, how information verification worked was through having an extensive and very expensive public media sector that every citizen paid with their taxes, and you have, like a body that provides citizens with neutral information. A process that is kind of managed by the state, but is also critical of the state. So the public broadcaster would also criticize the government, even though it was paid by taxes, by tax money. So now, in the time that we're living at the moment, what we are seeing in Germany and also in other parts of Europe is that this is eroding, because there are massive bots attacking the integrity of fact checkers, of public broadcasters, by questioning their credibility, by undermining the democratic consensus existing. So like freedom of press is also in danger in Europe, because of this massive change due to the rise of bots, and which is now exacerbated by AI. So there is no simple answer to that. I think the threats that you're describing are real, and they're there, and they're everywhere. They're global, in different shapes and forms. So what to do? Should we give up? Should we say, okay, like in times of AI, we have to give up on free press? I don't think so. I don't think that's an alternative. That's my personal opinion. But do I think it's an easy battle? No, it's a very, very difficult battle. It's an uphill battle everywhere. And I think the only thing that we can do is by helping, by getting out of our own echo chambers and try to cooperate even more globally, because it's a global phenomenon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the panel?
I do think that everything for young people is very important, because we say young people is the future of the world. And I do think the response or strategy to cope with this is a multi-stakeholder effort. So it must be a multi-stakeholder effort, maybe between the government and also between the platform companies. For example, as I mentioned, that the government maybe need to strengthen the regulations and legal framework related to this. And also for young people, I really think that we have to stress the digital literacy and education program, and this is might be integrated to formal and informal education systems, and especially maybe targeted as those vulnerable groups, such as the elderly, the women, the minorities, and of course young people, maybe for their formal and informal education. And also, I think there's also responsibilities for the platform companies, because they can maybe solve this problem technologically, and also from other regulations. For example, they can improve structures and also detection systems to minimize those likelihood of misinformation, etc. And also, maybe, for example, Facebook has a third-party fact-checking program, and Twitter also has a birdwatch feature that allows users to add notes and context to tweets and that they think are misleading or false, etc. So, so there are a lot of efforts that are needed, and I think that it must be a multi-stakeholder effort. And also, I would like to mention balance here, and also a very important equilibrium, because you know, we have to consider there's ethical considerations here, how to balance the curbing of false information and also at the same time preserve free speech rights at the same time. So this is a delicate equilibrium, and this one necessitates transparent regulation that doesn't inhibit those divergent opinions and essential criticism. So for young people, we have to cultivate a kind of critical thinking and also the capability to discern or debunking these misinformation, disinformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you clarify? Okay.
Hello?
I think this will be the last.
Am I audible?
Question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nusrat Jahan, and I am from Eastern University. As my previous two question has been talked about the young generation, and my question is the whole speaker panel, especially to our Nur Kabir sir, that we have been seeing this young generation has been known for their malpractice of culture and their disencouragement to do what our pioneers or our ancestor has been put legacies on us. So my question is, do you guys really think this conspiracy about this misinformation or disinformation could be a main reason behind this generation's disencouragement to do good practice or healthy practice about their culture or their legacies to run in future generation? Thank you.
I couldn't get the question properly.
Is it a question or?
Yes, this is a question. I want to know whether they think that this disinformation or disinformation will be a main cause for us, the younger generation, to disencourage doing healthy cultural practice or encouragement to came forward doing a good work in any field.
Good. Come forward. Please.
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting question.
Is that correct?
Yes. I'm sorry, I can't express myself properly.
Okay. Well, that's very, I mean, this is a question that relates to political science, sociology, international relations, and cultural studies. Many things involved in this question. Well, why should, a nation cannot do anything if their younger generation runs away from any country for that matter. Primarily, the cause is much more parochial in the sense that those who are powerful people, be it political, social, economic, or otherwise, they want their hegemony on their influence on other sections of the society. There's a question of domination and to be dominated. So those who want to dominate the majority and who doesn't have genuine causes to be able to dominate, they uses misinformation and disinformation. And this shouldn't discourage the younger generation, because the younger generation should be fighting forces. Even I related to the previous question. Once again, the sociological studies, media studies are needed to make sure that how to fight and this disinformation campaigns and other things and get accurate answers to the many questions about many issues. Well, some people can want you to just go away, don't ask nasty questions to the authorities, but question is whether you have to abide by those decisions or not. That's our country or anywhere. The citizens should have the final say on how things should run. Citizens have to fight for laws that who conducts disinformation needs to be punished. We have to raise our awareness. And make sure that we have a sound political and cultural environment, that we are not deprived of information and drowned with disinformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we only have 3 minutes in hand.
I have a question. I've been
Quickly,
waiting since.
quickly. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. My question, before question, I just want to talk about, like, every panelist were talking about to fact check or mismatch, or cross-matching our any kind of news.
You don't have lots of time.
Yeah, but my question is, but when any government itself spreads rumors and misinformation, what should we do? And then how come it possible to gain credibility of any kind of news? Then if I mention a small story, a couple of days ago, we have seen that more than 700 plus fake articles were published, and all those were regarding to promote our government itself, and as well as our couple of prominent newspapers were published it. So what's your observation about this matter for democracy, for our youth generation? How could we gain credibility? Whatever you can do, like when government and the prominent top class newspaper of your country is spreading rumors, what's your observation? Thank you.
No, microphone.
First one is, what do people do when a government spread lies? There's a famous book called All Governments Lie. Every government on earth lie in different forms. They hide information or spreads misinformation. So once again, there's a question of being awareness of the whole citizenry. If we accept that all governments on earth, or all authorities, I would rather say, not only just government, lie for their own interests, so we need to be vigilant. That's the only answer. And the second very specific question that I still don't know that government was behind all those 700 articles or not. I'm not sure that the gentleman who has raised this question have read all the 700 articles. I myself, as an editor, published four of those articles, but the content of the articles, my editorial judgment was okay with that. For me, we don't have to be everything has to be pro-opposition or something. It depends on the subjects of the content of the write-ups. The problem was the fakeness of the writers. Of many articles that I liked, I give a go-ahead only after reading them. So my editorial policy was very much consistent with the content of those newspapers. And why I then stopped it, because that writer didn't have the moral courage to use his or her genuine name. My problem with the articles that I published is not with the content. I love that content. Why I love that contents of 5-4 articles, we can argue. I'm sure everybody will not be interested in it. I personally invite you, we'll talk, that these are the things that I needed to publish. So my contention was with the fake names, not the fake contents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have time, sorry about that.
I will take 1 minute just to share that on important information. So the things is the food safety. Our honorable editor sir is here. I'm working 18 years in this food sector. Too many companies is producing food, they are telling safe food, but if you check and taste the food, you will find the substandard or like additional flavor or color added. If I want to mention, the Mashrafi is telling the water is the best quality in the market. If you taste the product, it will be C-graded product. So, but our newspapers, our media is publishing the ad with the picture of Mashrafi. So young generation is following Mashrafi, Saqib Al Hasan and others, our stars. Basically only the food safety and the food issues, this is the first basic needs of our life. So how can we control, or how can our mass media control these advertisement and TVC not to share the misinformation or colorful information for the young generation? Because
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You can talk to any of the panelists after this session. No, microphone.
It's a right to life issue, it's a falsehood, this and that. That needs to be seriously addressed, of course. And social awareness should be, the newspapers or media outlets should be boycotted by the people if they promote dubious food or medicine, life-saving issues. Of course, I agree with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Before I came to the podium, my friend Titumir was telling me the Speaker of the Parliament doesn't speak. So I am glad that I didn't have to speak that much. Thank you for sharing that knowledge with me. So it's very good. I would like to thank you all who have attended this session. And thank you especially for the people, young people, who came up with the questions. And I would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Anurag, Sherry, Leo, Nurul Kabir, Parvin Chaudhary. Thank you very much. I know the time was limited and we had to keep our timing in that way. Thank you very much.
Thanks to our panelists. Now I request them to please come forward of the stage to take a quick group photo. Stage